All right. LinkedIn Live, thank you for joining us today as we are going through a wonderful conversation with Kate, my fellow outlier and HR master. So we're going to talk about a lot of things today, specifically her business, what she's doing, her transition from corporate to what owning. Oh my goodness, what a nerve-wracking thing it is to own your own business and chart your own course. But Kate, thank you for joining me on LinkedIn Live. Folks, as you come in, both on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, get in there, get in the comments, tell us where you're coming from or joining us from. And we love to, if you have questions, to answer those. But Kate, welcome to LinkedIn Live. It is my pleasure to host you and discuss everything that you are doing. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I love your intro.
Well, we try to keep those simple, but hey, it's effective. So as we're going through this conversation, tell us a little bit about you, and then we'll get into why the corporate to ownership shift, because that is, like I said, nerve-wracking. Sometimes it's the unknown. People do this a lot of times, but we see a lot of things go up and we see a lot of things go down. So tell us a little bit about you.
So my background actually did not start in HR. I started in the nonprofit space working with juvenile offenders, actually. Transitioned into a sales career, spent over 10 years in sales. And during my time in sales, really found a pretty significant gap in leadership development as it related to really successful sellers transitioning into leadership roles and failing pretty miserably. So went back to school, got my master's in leadership development, and was disappointed to find that all of the jobs that seemed to be a perfect fit fell under HR. And I had spent my entire career trying to stay off of HR's radar. So transitioned into the HR world and just never really looked back.
And that is, when we talk about our journeys in life, we just never know. We never know what one connection or what one meeting or what one conference. We'll go to conference and say, oh my goodness, I've been in the wrong thing all this time. And it seems like in our journey in life, we try to kind of sift out what it is that really is calling to our passion, because at the end of the day, if you're not doing your passion, it becomes a job, right? And there's a difference between a job and your forever, right? And there's a lot of things that we've done in the past that have facilitated this. But it's funny that you say you started with the juvenile side. What intrigued you about that to get into that? Because for me, I've had opportunity to do it, but I was like, nah, I'm not doing it.
Well, I grew up in the Silence of the Lambs era, and I just really wanted to get into criminal profiling. That I thought was my calling. Wow. My undergrad was psych, criminal justice, and sociology, and transitioning to work with juveniles just felt like, at the time, really something that I could make an incredible impact with. So that was what sparked my interest in that world, and did it for over 5 years, which is a lifetime sort of in that environment.
So seldom do you go to college, get a degree, and get to jump into what you do. And I've asked a lot of professionals, hey, are you doing what you went to college? They were like, no. And in my career, I only did, well, not counting the Navy because that was kind of dedicated, but post-Navy, I only did one job out of maybe 4 or 5 that had to do something with my degree. And so it's nice to see that you fell into the area that you had studied. And so your transition from there, I know you have sports in all of that background. How did that come about? Because from juvenile and detention centers and sports.
Well, there is a common thread, which was really just always wanting to be a helper. That was always something that was in my background. And when I transitioned out of sales, I found myself in healthcare and was in healthcare up until the pandemic. And I left during the pandemic, a career in human resources, specifically during the pandemic. It was just a tough road. And after I left healthcare, I had multiple people reach out to me. I am a rabid Philadelphia sports fan, go Birds. And somebody had said this position opened up with this entrepreneurial organization that is focused on sports media and marketing. And it's a perfect opportunity for you to combine your two passions, the HR and building and creating and developing strong HR teams, and my passion for sports. So, and they were right. It was the perfect fit. And that was actually a position that I stayed in for 3.5 years, helped to build the organization, and then left at the end of last year to start my own business.
Now, this is where it really becomes intriguing and exciting. So business ownership is not for the faint in heart, right? You come from sales, so you eat what you kill, right? That's basically what it is. If you're not going after it, it's not coming to you.
That's right.
Unless you got such a great product that people are flooding you. But for the most part, in sales, is your effort is what, and that's why it kind of pulls a lot of people to sales. You mean that I don't have a threshold? I don't, I could make tons of money on my own. And there are people who thrive in that environment. I'm not one that does it because I can't even knock on people's doors to tell them that my kids' cookies came in, right? So I'm not that type of person. But there are some that are. And you had, your career going for you. You knew what you were good at. You were doing it. And now this thing of ownership comes up. And if you ask me, that is very non-secure.
Yes.
It's not secure. It's not like you're going and then every 2 weeks or whatever periodicity you get paid, it's in the bank. This is even a little more harder than sales because it's all on you, like everything. So when did you get the bug for this one? Because, whoo.
I've always been sort of an out of the box thinker. I've always approached even HR, which has historically been very black and white. I've always looked for the gray. I've always been a how do you get to yes person. And so for me, selling has never been about selling a product. It's always been about relationship building. And so it felt like a very natural transition to leave something that I had naturally done for so many years, built an incredible network, had people asking if I would consult, if I would coach, if I would do these things, but I just never had the time because I was fully dedicated to the role that I had in corporate. And so I just felt like start of a new year. I had started sort of toying around with the idea about a year prior, while still very invested in the role that I had thought about authorship as well. And so I was really just feeling it out. And then when I committed, I just committed fully. And I, still have an incredible relationship with the organization that I left because my goal was really just to be able to do something on my own. To be responsible for my own fate, and to be able to do it my way. And that's something that, I haven't really ever had.
And I love, ownership kind of drives you that way. My own fate, right? My own passion. You get to really give your product from where you are. And it doesn't happen that way when you're a part of somebody else's dream, right? I often tell folks that ask me, hey, should I do entrepreneurship? Should I stay salary? Should I? And I always say this, and it just blows their minds. I said, salary is what someone pays you to give up on your dream.
Yes. I love that.
And that is so sobering, right? And I said,
So true.
and so we only have but so much life.
Right.
When do you get to do your dream? And right now, you have said no to that, to yes to you. And so congratulations, number one, to getting to that point, because not too many people are daring enough to do it. Now, let's talk about this entity, this ownership, this thing that you are bringing to the world, because I want to focus around that. Folks, if you have ever done entrepreneurship or have ever thought that you should, this is the journey that we're going to discuss. It. This is the journey. This is it. You're saying no to someone's salary so that you could say yes to you, but it's not easy. So what, again, tell us about the organization.
Yeah, so my goal with Kate McKinnon HR Solutions is really to change the face of HR. I believe that it is trending in this direction now, finally, that it is a true partnership with the person running a business. On the corporate side, HR strategy doesn't happen by accident. Culture doesn't happen by accident. And being intentional, ensuring that you're building the culture that you envision, but also the culture that your employees are experiencing, is something that I'm incredibly passionate about. And then on the individual side, I love working with people in transition. So whether that be new grads transitioning to the workforce, helping prepare them in ways that maybe they weren't prepared in their degree program, their school program, working with former athletes and working with veterans to help with those skills that are so desired by organizations, but sometimes they come with a sense of loss. They're not really sure how to communicate them effectively and appropriately. And so how do we really help? Because it helps the individual, but it also helps the business. I mean, having diversity of thought is so important, and it is an advantage from a business perspective as well. So that's my goal, is to really help change the face of what HR can be for people and organizations.
And there's a lot of organizations out there, they know that they need that, right?
Yeah.
Even with an HR complement, folks, hey, and you may have the greatest HR people for your organizations, and kudos to you for doing that. But there's sometimes that we miss a lot because we're in the weeds. We're, that whole forest thing is real. Yeah, I used to say, another cliche. No, when you're right there and there's nothing but a tree in front of you, you miss the big picture, right? And so if you feel you're an organization out there, you feel that, hey, yeah, I do got a great HR team, but maybe we might want to get someone to peek in here and see where we may be missing the mark, or maybe you're not missing the mark, but see where we can add value, add more value, or maybe we need to pull a little back on something. How can we do that? Well, Kate's the one that you need to bring in and let her help you, because sometimes we do miss a lot of those key areas and elements of our organization that will help us get to the next level. And sometimes that next level may seem like down the road until you bring in Kate, and then she can probably shorten that time period, which is the goal, right? So you've been working at this now for a little bit. You launched out. What are the areas that you see currently with the folks that you're working with that are their greatest challenges in this aspect?
So I think, two areas that I would say I focus on the most right now with my clients. One is this middle management training gap. Having managers that are responsible for leading the direction of the organization, but don't have the time to do it. As we're trying to do more with less, it has to be a very intentional effort, but it also has to be realistic. And I think that what happens is, people think that feedback, performance management, having conversations with your teams, they don't do it because it's time consuming. And so how can you do that in a very quick way, a very natural way, where it's not once a year, but it's consistent, so that you get a real pulse on your employees. Because one of the things that I've seen a lot of is that business owners, CEOs, they're not malintended. They're not trying to do things the wrong way. They just don't have time to focus on things and doing them differently. And so understanding that time is a huge component of that. How can you do things quickly? How can you make quick decisions? How can you change little pieces of what you're doing to better suit the culture that you're trying to create? And then the other thing I see a lot of are businesses that haven't had HR, entrepreneurial businesses, family-run businesses where, you know, the accountant is doing HR or the CFO is doing HR, but really they need to have a focus on HR. They have maybe attrition. They're not retaining people. They're not hiring the right people. The business isn't getting to the next level that they're hoping for. And there's a lack of understanding that bringing somebody in to just focus on hiring the right people, training the right people, intentional culture building, that will actually get their business to the next level. And that's the gap, helping with that piece. And then individually, just so much change over the course of this year with, the changes with the political environment and the country and where are things going and how are we getting there, and layoffs, and are we hiring, not hiring? There's just a lot of uncertainty there. And so people are losing their jobs because of uncertainty, not because of lack of skill or lack of value. And so a lot of people that I coach individually are finding themselves either in that position, or they're learning and feeling like, I don't really know that I'm stable right now in the job that I have. And so maybe it's time to branch out and to explore other things if I am not feeling super comfortable.
And that exploration is another shaky area to come up with an encounter. Folks, HR is there for a reason. They normally, in my experience, normally work for the company, right? So you got to keep that in mind. They do kind of bridge the leadership and those that are in supervisory with the people, and then they are there to listen to the people and kind of do all of that people business. But they do have a loyalty. You have to say it. They do have a loyalty to the company. They are paying their salary just like you, and so sometimes that dynamic is kind of tricky, right? I've seen it work in the favor of the employee. I've seen it work in the favor of the leadership, and then I've seen it work where nobody won, right? So, but at the end of the day, most of it is centered around the leadership, right? The executives and how that rolls. When you come up to this realization that it may be your time to make a decision, how does HR help with that? Because it's kind of hard to come up to HR and say, "Hey, I'm at this road where I may be better suited for maybe another department here at this company, or unfortunately, maybe better suited to move on." How does HR help there? Because that's kind of a hard question to ask your own company.
I love that question. And I have so many thoughts that would absolutely take us way past our time. So I'll try to sort of streamline it a little bit. But I think first, HR's reputation as being only for the company, I think is the case in some companies.
Yeah.
I like to challenge that thought, because HR is not responsible for protecting the company as their sole job. They are not the police of the organization. If you have a solid, strong HR team, the HR team protecting your employees and doing things like making sure that people are in the right seats, making sure that people have the right succession plan, helping people identify career pathing. By protecting the employees and by them having a stake in their experience in an organization, now you don't have one department that is tasked with like protecting the company, but the employees then become protective of the company and the culture and environment that they've created. And I think that that is almost a missing link that is really, really important. Building trust, and we got this question on your LinkedIn, I believe, before the podcast. How do you create those relationships? I think HR needs to do what they say they're going to do. And so I've had employees come to me where they've said, I have this situation, and I have said, are you just looking for somebody to listen? Are you looking for somebody to offer guidance, or do you need the problem solved? And those are all very different things. If you're just asked to listen and somebody is brainstorming and spitballing ideas, then that's not a run to the leadership and have that conversation with the leadership. That's a real, let's coach and let's talk through this with the employee. And so being a person that can talk to your HR team, you need to know what your HR team is all about. And that comes from, communication, doing what you say you're going to do, following through on promises, not over promising. So building that trusted relationship is most important, because one of the reasons that I never wanted to get into HR was because I disliked every HR person I'd ever come across for that very reason. Because you look at them as, if I actually need somebody or something, the last person I would talk to is HR, because they're just going to tell the company. And so it is a balance. It's a hard balance. But it's a really important line in the sand that I think, people that are working with the people side of the business need to be very clear with their leadership team and with their C-level executives that the way that I practice HR might be different, and it might not be for you. But if you value it in this way, helping people with career paths, helping people if they identify that this is not the right thing for them, how do you help them move on? That protects the company. If you're helping somebody move to something that's a better fit for them, you are potentially retaining an employee. You're potentially moving an underperformer into a role that they can succeed in. You are building a stronger team of people that want to be in the role that they maybe don't want to be in. And so it's just helping to bridge that gap in a way that's appropriate, where you can talk to the C-level executives about why it matters, and you can also potentially moving an underperformer into a role that they.
Yeah, and it's important. That role in HR is so vital. And I think it's often, like you said, sometimes you like, I don't want to talk. No, don't say that. Boy, don't say that. They're gonna get rid of you. And some companies, you just gotta be honest, some companies do operate that way.
So true.
And so okay, you have to be kind of sure that when you're gonna ask something like that. But from the leadership standpoint, and from just the managers, and not even getting to HR yet, right? From a leader's standpoint, I should be keen enough and savvy enough to identify that before we ever even got to HR, to say, hey Joe, hey Sue, man, I've been noticing that it's just kind of getting harder for you to do this. Is everything okay? Is there anything that I can do to make that journey for you better? Am I providing everything you need to succeed there? And so before we jump to HR for this type of help, I hope all the leaders out there are realizing that you have a key place in this whole equation for a person that may be needing to move somewhere. Either a different directorate or a different group, or maybe a different company, but you can facilitate that so easily just by being in tune and abreast of all of your teams, ups and downs. It may be a personal thing. It may be a hard season. It may be something they're going through at home. Yeah, it may be a sick child, but if you don't know, how's HR going to know?
That it could not be more spot on. And that's where that middle management training and coaching, I see it all the time. And that is oftentimes the biggest need, because I think there's some fear there. I think, people that are managing teams, they almost don't want to get in the weeds with the personal, or it's because it's easier not to. It's easier to ignore it. But I always tell people that HR rarely, 99.9% of the time, it's not the person that's making the final decision about whether somebody stays or goes in an organization. They're the ones that are helping to facilitate somebody staying or going, having that conversation, making sure that the company is legally protected around the verbiage that's used. But HR, never in my experience have I seen HR say this person is going because I said so. It just doesn't happen. Yeah. And so middle managers are just the key to making sure that that gap is bridged. And that's where I'm seeing so much of that middle management coaching, because I think companies realize that that's the biggest gap. And not because, again, going back to, it's not malintended. It's just because there's a lack of time.
And there is a lack of time, and there's also a lack of interest. As you mentioned, some people don't want to get into that.
Right.
And I'm the one that I'll tell you, if you don't want to get into that, get out of the way. Get 100%. Out of the way. Don't take that salary as a leader if you don't intend to help these people, because they're coming to work like you are, except that you're getting a little more than they are, so that you can be that help. And so hopefully you're taking, I got a whole other thing on that responsibility. But it is true that HR facilitates the talks. They facilitate the dance. They facilitate the transition from being non-employee to an employee. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the HR perceptions are wrong from a lot of perspectives. And one of those is that they do the hiring and fire. No, a manager, they call them hiring managers. That's what they call it, right? Yeah. They are the ones that say, yeah, I want that person on my team. No, this person needs to leave.
Almost always.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are exceptions, but almost always. And, I think that's the crux of it, right? Is that the middle manager leadership is a lonely job. Oftentimes it is a selfless job. I mean, you're getting work done through others. And I think that the problem comes in a lot of times when you see organizations that only have one way of looking at development, where you take somebody that is a very strong individual contributor and put them in a position to manage others, when oftentimes they have no desire to lead others and they're not good at it. And that's okay. So having different career paths that allow for individual contributors to continue to grow and rise up, and also having leaders of people able to do the same thing, then that allows for this, I think, challenge that we have where we put really, really solid contributors into roles where they shouldn't be leading.
Yeah. Hey, folks, just an update, because it's funny. This is a LinkedIn Live that's not live on LinkedIn. So if you saw me going back and forth because I was checking, this is streaming live on Facebook. So you can always go to my personal page and see it there. It is also streaming live on YouTube. So what I did was I took the YouTube link and I posted it on LinkedIn. And so you could catch it there streaming now and join us on YouTube. I'll figure that one out post the event. But it is on LinkedIn, and you can always see and join us on YouTube. So, all right. So having the background, Kate, of being HR and now driving your own, destiny here, what would an HR professional have to come up with in their mind? What's the thought that would allow an HR professional now in the industry to say, hey, let's get Kate in here? Because that disparity between the mindset of being employed and in a corporation to now saying, oh, we may need help, is not something that a lot of people really jump at. They have to get to this set in their head to say, you know what, let's do this.
So in terms of bringing in myself to work with an existing HR team internally, I think that there are a couple of things. My goal is never to take someone's job, right? My goal is to,
you got your own.
Right, exactly. I've done that, and I'm good, right? So I think it's really understanding and talking to what their biggest concerns are out of the gate. So just like in any sales role, understanding somebody's objections is key to figuring out how to overcome them. And I think that a lot of times it's fear, it's thoughts that, maybe somebody will present something that I should have thought about myself. And so I think when I do partner, with HR groups that are already established internally, my goal is to say, like, where do you need the help? Is it that you're, really focusing on tactical things and you're not able to pull away and get strategic? Well, if that were the case and you were able to pull away, what are the things that you think you need the most of? And I'm a big fan of stop, start, continue meetings. So going in and talking to HR professionals and saying, what are the things you'd like to stop doing, start doing, and continue doing? And then putting together a plan and talking to the HR team to say, how does this sound? These are the roles that you're going to play in the plan. And this is my thought. What are your thoughts? And what have you tried that has failed? Why has it failed? What are some things that you've started but haven't been able to finish? How can I help enable you to either finish those, or how can I take things, how can I finish it so that you can focus on other things? And so it's really an alliance with the existing HR team. And the bottom line is that, HR professionals aren't all interested in the same things. So, somebody contacts me and says, I need you to do a compensation analysis and figure out bonus structures. I can talk to the strategy of what will motivate the teams, but that is not my strength. And I'll tell people right away, I can refer amazing people that can do that work, but that's not my strength. So my strength is culture building. So if you have a team that's incredibly strong in culture building and you need somebody that can handle the payroll functions, I'm not the person. And, so really being honest with where my strengths lie and how I can supplement a team is key.
All right. So, folks, if you are thinking of these things, questions rolling through your head, you're looking at maybe beefing up what you're doing, maybe just take an assessment of what you're doing. Have Kate come. She'll certainly assess what you're doing versus your goals, right? Because everything is towards the goal, and give you a straight way to improve. And every improvement, especially in HR section, is gold because it deals with people's lives. You are not just there for benefits. I wish that was that easy. All right. That was just one shot, one kill, but there's so many facets to what HR do. I really appreciate the HR departments because they don't get as much of a praise as they should. They do get beat down and they do get talked about.
Oh, yeah.
But they do so much. I mean, everything that deals with the person in your corporation comes through that office. So give them some praise and give them some love when you can. Obviously, if they're doing something that they should be talked about, hey, tell it to them, not the public. But when we try to focus on the middle manager, because the middle managers, the leaders' relationship with HR at times is kind of abrasive, right? Especially once everybody comes in and then they're part of your team and then you want to take ownership. And so a lot of times the managers and HR don't have such a great comms back and forth. And I already said that middle managers, leaders, you're the key to facilitating a lot of these transitions or improvements in your team with the help of HR, and they can facilitate those things like trainings and stuff. So let's talk about specific training for these leaders, because I've seen a lot of times that the leaders require it. HR knows that they do, but there's just either funding issues or the leaders themselves are not asking for it. So, I mean, you're not going to volunteer money out the door. But there has to be a way where HR can, step in maybe and say, hey, you might need this training. Yes. And so how do I get a leader to, number one, accept that they do? And then how do I get HR to be, courageous enough to say, no, you need this. You're going.
Wow. I think that there are a lot of different components that make up that sort of relationship and that presentation of potential needs. I think you can look at data. So if you have retention data, if you have a manager who's consistently like bleeding people, they're just constantly losing talent, that's a problem. If you have people that are leaving after 90 days in a job, right? Maybe that's a interviewing problem, a talent acquisition problem. Maybe the job is not being presented properly by the hiring manager. If you have managers that are overseeing production, sales departments, and they're not hitting their numbers, are we giving feedback? Are we giving coaching? If there is a manager where, there is a problem with poor behavior, but really successful selling goals, if it's a sales role, a lot of times that poor behavior is tolerated because they're bringing in the numbers. And so maybe there's coaching that's needed there. So there are just so many different components to what would make a manager. I mean, it's rare that you get direct feedback from employees that say this manager is really like not doing what they're supposed to be doing. But it happens. I mean, you get complaints about leaders, you get, some things. And so then it's investigation and really identifying, is this a true problem that is coachable, trainable? Can we work with this manager? Can we ensure a safe work environment for all of the employees while also providing coaching that, the leader doesn't know that the employees are the ones that are really challenged with this situation. And so that's where the trust comes in and the curiosity from the HR team. Because what can happen is that, when you work for an organization long enough, you know the personalities, and it can be easy to jump to conclusions about, well, they just don't like him because, he's micromanaging, or they just don't like her because she demands a lot. But really being open-minded and drilling down and seeing, is this behavior something that we need to really focus on, and can we coach and train? And then I think it's providing, from a budgetary perspective, if you have ownership of your budget, it's understanding, is this something that we've already budgeted for? Do we have training and development slotted in here? And can we afford to do this? And if it's a need that's not incorporated in the budget, then it's going to leadership and saying, this is the impact on the organization, and this is what we need to do to remedy that. And so, that's where I think HR comes in a strategic way, instead of being the police of the organization, being a partner with the executives and saying, you have a problem here. I think we can solve it. Here's my recommendation as to how. I think that goes a long way.
Absolutely. Now we've got a couple of people. Thank you, Jason, for being with us. He's always supporting. I love you, brother. And some others that are joining us. Part of the trial, and based on this comment here, I says I've been in my previous jobs, I faced a lot of trouble and felt like I don't want to work for anyone anymore. We've all felt that. I don't think there's anybody on earth that has worked for somebody and say, man, I don't want to work for nobody anymore.
Yeah.
And situations do get you to that point.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, for those that, or for the person that commented, things have become better for you. And if not, hey, put some more questions in there. We'll address them. It is a delicate kind of dance that HR has to with the leader to identify those things. You're right. There's a lot of key markers that will kind of facilitate you saying, wow, that guy hired a whole team and the whole team is gone.
Yeah.
You might want to look at that leader, right?
Yeah.
And I want to bring this up because in that vein of thought, why is it so hard for leadership to say, hey, we're bleeding out people here in this particular department? To say it can't be the 5 people came in here and were terrible. And how do we get to the point where we say, hey, manager, leader, or whatever you want to call it, come in here because we need to evaluate whether you'll just be the greatest technician we've ever had, but not a leader anymore?
Yeah, I think it depends on the industry. It depends on the level of the leader. But at the core, I think it stems from the behaviors that you're willing to accept as an organization. And
Mm,
so if it's a behavioral issue, if it's somebody that is demeaning or too demanding or doesn't care about their team, then it's tied back to this does not align with our core values as an organization. And so then the conversation becomes very much centered around, if your core values are leading with empathy, are you doing these things? That we're not seeing these out of you. And your performance might be here, but there's no way it could be if you've lost your whole team, right? So in addition to not upholding the values, you're also not performing well if you can't retain your employees. And so that's when you have goal setting and expectations and one-on-ones. And that's why those types of structures are so critically important, because once it gets to a point where you've lost your whole team, then I would argue that it's probably not even the middle manager's fault. Who's overlooking that this is an incredibly bad problem, and how are we addressing that? And then it goes to, all right, well, who's at the highest level that is not seeing this as a problem? And then the training actually goes from there down. And so, it's complicated. And that's, I think, most of, the HR strategy is very complex, and there are a lot of moving pieces. And that's why it's so important to be able to have a good partnership and a good relationship with the person that's responsible for the HR leadership in your organization.
absolutely, folks. Yeah, we all have roles to play in an organization. Uh, be familiar with what role HR truly is playing in your organization, because that will give you at least a roadmap as to where you can bring them in to facilitate a lot of these conversations, uh, even if it's from the executives. And I address the executives now because in this scenario, you have a lot to do with this particular leader. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're an executive of a particular department and your leader's bleeding, you might want to get another leader, right? I was just saying, right? That might be a solution to your throughput. But a lot of times, these conversations, though, as hard as they may be, are needed, and you have to have enough courage. If there's anything that I will implore of those listening, these conversations need courage. And if you can't have or sum up enough courage to have them, and you're doing a disservice to not only the employee, to yourself, to the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And you cannot hide behind a desk or behind a cubicle, whatever you want to hide behind, not to have these, because they are, it's money. It's money.
100%.
And
I say
so,
all the time, culture is only as good as the worst behavior you're willing to tolerate in an organization. And that's it.
willing to tolerate is a very profound comment, right? Because that's what we do. We learn how to, and we are willing to tolerate some things. And I've seen the best of it, and I've seen the worst of it in my time. And I'll tell you that that is the key. What are you willing to accept? What are you willing to say no, no more? And when, right? And when do you do that? So, Kate, if there was someone listening, and this will be live on Facebook, this live on on LinkedIn, and and definitely live on YouTube, because I'm watching it right now. There's an organization, there's somebody listening, they caught this on a replay that says, you know what, we might want somebody to come in. How would they do that to get you to go to them? How would the listener, the viewer, connect with you to get more information? And where should they go for that information?
Yeah, they could come directly to me on LinkedIn. I am the less famous Kate McKinnon. I am not the Saturday Night Live version. And then Kate McKinnon HR Solutions, they can look at some of the services that I provide. They can go straight to the website. And please reach out. I mean, even if, I offer a 30-minute consultation for no charge, and I'm happy to brainstorm or really anything. I love having conversations with business owners, with teams, with middle managers, with individuals. And even if you're a middle manager and you wonder, like, do I fall into this category? Could I be having a problem with leadership? I also work with individuals on leadership development and how to gain some of those skills.
Absolutely. Well, folks, you had the information you need. We'll make sure to get into the comments and put those links so that it'll facilitate you getting there sooner. But Kate, thank you for having this conversation around not only HR leadership, what you're doing and your backstory, for folks to get a little familiar with you, but also with what you're providing. And if you are an HR leader, if you are a leader, and you think that in any way, shape, or form, you could benefit from a 30-minute she better than me. You're going to get 15 from me, but 30 minutes, folks, you can cover a lot of things there. But if you feel like you are in the position to explore that, give Kate a holler. We'll make sure all her links are in the comments for you to peruse. Go through her website, see what she's all about, see what she's doing, and give her some love. Kate, thank you for sharing this afternoon with me on LinkedIn Live. Well, not so live on LinkedIn, but you know what I mean. Folks, reach out to Kate, explore the options. Don't be afraid. I already said courage is one of those elements you need, both in HR and in leadership. Explore that and make something of it. Thank you for joining us on all the platforms that we're streaming live. And Kate, thank you for what you're doing in the HR leadership space. We really appreciate it. It cannot be said enough of having help when you thought that you may have not needed it, right? And it's so important. Any last words from you?
Thank you so much. It's for those of you that don't know, we met through TOP, the Outlier Project, and it is just, I'm so grateful to have met you, and this has been a great time.
Oh, great to meet you. And folks, yes, as she mentions, the Outlier Project, I'll put a link in there as well. We're looking for new members, and I'll tell you that the membership in here is cream of the crop, right? And I will put that information in there as well for you to go check the Outlier Project out. You'll never be disappointed for being part of that community. Folks, thank you for being with us today on this LinkedIn Live, and we hope that you learned something from the conversation. Get in the comments if you have questions, even on the replay. We'll be sure to address those. Have a great afternoon, and thank you once again, Kate.
Thank you.